Hi.
Thanks, Big Daddy. Yeah. Appreciate it.
Always glad to. Lots of hemp news in there.
I was all of us here at News Center 4. I'm Ron Burgundy. You stay classy, San Diego.
Stay classy.
He may contain
hemp.
Oh, my.
Yep. No, when we look at Marijuana Business Daily, who incorporates not only a national view but an international view of cannabis, and they feature hemp so prominently in their list of things to look out for in 2019, that gives me a lot of enthusiasm. There's a lot of hemp research that can already be built upon from European sources and from Canadian sources. So when we look at what we're doing in the United States, there's no need to reinvent the wheel, as we sometimes do with marijuana research. We selectively ignore progress from Israel, and we selectively ignore progress from Great Britain and Spain and France, and we force American institutions to redo studies that have already proven, palpable results in other places. So,
and there are some exciting hemp projects that are already taking place in the U.S. For example, when I went to the Hemp Industries Conference, there was a group from Colorado that's going through research trials on introducing hemp feed into for farm animals, for cows and chickens and whatnot, because of the FDA restrictions. So they've already started going through the clinical trial. It's like a $40,000 process in order to get it approved to be allowed for animal feed, which is just another one of the million ways in which hemp has great potential to change a really kind of screwed up industry.
Well, we know that hemp was used as a rotation crop in order to enrich farmlands and things here in Michigan and in the Midwest, and that hemp had so many purposes and uses in a colonial situation, too. I mentioned this earlier. I was on that... it's called Critical Grass. It's a podcast originating from Poland. It's an English-language European podcast. And I talked about hemp there. And, when you start looking at the different things we can do with hemp on an international basis, you look at Africa with arid regions where crops are difficult to grow. Hemp is a drought-tolerant crop. It can provide food, fuel, and fiber for indigenous persons, and also provide a cash crop, which is very difficult for them to enter into a marketplace on.
Sure.
So you empower entire cultures with the ability to be self-sustaining instead of being dependent upon outside sources.
Absolutely.
And then you look at the Amazon rainforest. They chop down rainforest, they grow grass, they feed cattle for 2 or 3 years, and then they move on because the soil is all depleted and there's no nutrients left, and that soil just erodes right into the watershed, and that land's no longer usable. You can plant crops of hemp which are renewable each and every year, which don't deplete the soil, and which control erosion. And that eliminates the need for those indigenous persons to cut down those trees. So when we talk about reintroducing hemp internationally, look at the opportunity it creates in places where maybe business doesn't reach, but the compassion should.
Oh, absolutely. And even if you look in the U.S., I mean, you have I think in the last study, 2 of the largest producers of hemp in the U.S. were Colorado and North Dakota. And neither of those states are really prime, what you would consider farming, ground. So it hasn't even really touched on the U.S. side, the side of the U.S. where you traditionally would have a lot of your agricultural development. But, farmers in Colorado are growing hemp in areas that are more or less deserts. So it's pretty remarkable crop.
So they'd be in lands where regular farmers didn't want to operate because it was just too marginal as far as the soil goes.
Like the only other thing they're growing there is, I think, potatoes, maybe. Or
so
cactus.
Kentucky is one of those states that's always associated with the hemp industry because they certainly were an innovator in state laws, but they haven't really opened themselves up the way that they potentially could, though. Isn't that true?
No, it's been kind of restricted, which is surprising, and I wonder how much of that is impacted by the status of the tobacco companies there. But ultimately, with the Farm Bill passing, that would seemingly open up to where the tobacco companies, and I've already heard rumors and stories about different tobacco companies taking steps to start selling hemp cigarettes, which I think we talked about before.
Deb's a big fan.
Yeah, Jimmy and I sampled some. They were quite tasty, right?
Like smoking a clove cigarette pulled out of Satan's ass.
Yes.
I think is what
horrible.
I think the really interesting thing about hemp that is really going to impact us here in Michigan is the impact it's going to have on the manufacturing industry.
Hemp is going to be good for a lot of things. Smoking is not one of them.
Yeah, but I mean, to think that all the interior panels of a automobile can be made from resin that is created from hemp. and replacing all these toxic plastic components and growing them from the soil.
Packaging that goes into
For sure.
anything and everything.
Or you talk about Starbucks, getting rid of straws to replace them with plastic lids. I mean, you could build a full cup with a hemp plastic lid.
Didn't
It's
Cheech and
completely
Chong make a movie
biodegradable.
about this?
Yeah, but the fact is with hemp, though, I mean, in Michigan, if you had a decorticating machine, if you had the processing equipment, people would truck their hemp distance to get to your center to process it.
Yes.
And not every grain elevator is going to have this. Not every place you turn in sugar beets is going to have a hemp processing center because it won't be popular enough to justify that initial investment by some people. So if you're the guy that has that hemp processing center in the middle of farmland central, you're probably going to be one of those millionaires. So I'm curious. Josh and I were speaking earlier whether or not the rules are going to allow farmers to get a hemp crop in the ground in 2019. The hemp bills passed in Michigan's legislature require the rules to be completed by the end of February, which would put them at March 1st, which should give people time to plant. But Josh, you said that there's an impediment to that.
Yeah, I believe that, and I want to double check, but from my last reading of the federal hemp bill, it actually required approval through the U.S. Department of Agriculture of any program that was state implemented. It was basically either you have a state implemented program that's approved federally or you don't do anything at all, in which case the feds are supposed to produce their own program within a year. I don't remember if there was a timeline on their response to any sort of plan that was proposed. I know that a couple states came out with them immediately upon the Farm Bill passing. But it's going to be interesting to see what the turnaround, and my concern was if they came out with it March 1st and then the federal government, assuming that they aren't still shut down, comes back within even, a month or two. I mean, you're starting
14 now, the government shut down.
A month later, you're now sitting within a few weeks of farming season started, and now you're starting the application process. And I mean, even with this time crunch, it's going to be difficult for farmers to turn around in the next couple months.
Well, let me ask you this. The Farm Bill itself was just passed in December and signed by President Trump. So there were existing hemp programs in other states prior to that. Now, are those programs grandfathered in and they don't require new approval? And if so, did the states that enacted these emergency legislations right before the end of their session, are they also grandfathered in?
That's an excellent question. I believe my initial thought is I believe that there are still going to be research programs run through colleges and things like that have been taking place for the last 4+ years. So that would be an interesting thing to see, is because I know that in communicating with a lot of schools in Michigan, for example, under the Research Act, their hesitation to get in was always, well, it's federally illegal.
Well, no, it's not.
And we have to deal with the DEA, and how do we do all
They have
this?
to come up with a new
Hopefully we can
excuse
see
now.
some expanded
Right, and
research.
so you would think that approaching a university now, we're just talking about a commodity crop.
Yep. I think what we want to do is get a little Razor Ray action.
Yeah!
Bring it on. Can we get some Razor Ray?
And have them
Chop it up, Ray.
So,
Oh, there it is.
Now, this guitar is kind of compromised, but Ray is going to work around
It's
that.
compromised.
Are we doing a sing-along?
We're going to do Esteban's
Sing-along.
Honey theme song.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Ay, 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 ay. Come on, Esteban. Get
it, baby. There you go. There you go. Nice. That was fun. That was a little ditty I just created. It's called A Little Ditty. I just created. AKA fuck Bill Shooty. Fuck that guy. Can I get a big fuck Bill Shooty?
Fuck Bill Shooty.
What?
Fuck Bill Shooty.
I can't hear you. Fuck Bill Shooty.
Yeah.
Shitty.
Bye-bye, Shooty.
All right.
Well, on that note, it is 10 o'clock.
Word to fuck Bill Shooty.
And,
we only have really no time left, but we have a lot of people that probably have a lot of important things to say.
Maybe.
If I consume all the time. I think we can blame Brett Forster. Jesse may want to throw some commentary because he's here. And
he is here.
I'm here.
He's here.
Group.
Yeah, we're doing stuff.
Of course, is always anything coming out of his mouth is going to have some kind of direct impact on
the entire universe.
The butterfly effect.
And Rick has spoken. He's free to speak. And Deborah, who of course,
I got one thing to bring up.
Okay, all right. Well, let's lose any sense of order and people just go ahead and throw whatever they want.
It's chaos.
Slap it up. All right. Well, look. So, I guess I want to announce that we're going to be hosting our first class on January 26th in Ypsilanti. We got more information on the Facebook page, the Michigan Medical Marijuana Association and Friends. We're going to be doing some basic education. It's going to be a free event. Snacks are going to be provided.
What kind
We're
of
going to do
snacks?
some hanging out.
kind of snacks?
That's to be determined.
Nice.
Scooby snacks? Esteban may be donating.
Ooh.
Or may not be donating. Again, that's to be determined. But that's January 26th, Saturday, Ypsilanti, 2 p.m. We're going to talk. It's going to be geared more towards first-timers and entry-level folks. So if you're coming trying to learn how to do some hydroponic gardening, you're probably going to be let down. But if you're wanting to know the difference between indica and sativa, that's going to be the place to be.
All right.
And we're going to party afterwards.
Outdated information.
I was going to say.
Don't worry about indicas.
Who doesn't know this stuff?
Not even going to matter.
Well, update the curriculum as
Update the curriculum.
You guys probably come in there and be
All
like,
right.
yeah.
Rick Thompson also had a
Rick
party.
has some urgent words for us.
This event in Ypsilanti, right?
All right, I just want to
sign that. Okay.
All right, just want to report on some
live music
correspondence.
now associated with that event that Jesse was talking about. Here's what we said. Okay.
All right.
Next to Rick Thompson.
Next.
We're going to report on some correspondence here real quick that I had with David Harns, who's the spokesperson for licensing and regulatory affairs. And I sent him a very simple email. I said, David, how many pediatric patients are registered in the MMMA? Mm-hmm. His response to me was a single line, and it was that information you are requesting is not public information.
Mm.
Let me ask you, and
because
I know we don't have time to discuss
Because they're minors,
it.
or because...
No, it's just the number of pediatric patients, which they used to report
They've
on.
published the number before.
And they stopped reporting on it after we were using it successfully to indicate the number of sympathetic people that there were in the system.
They did.
So we now have a decision from the Bill Shooty, fuck Bill Shooty.
Well,
era,
fuck Bill Shooty.
Right?
So
I'm going to shove some FOIA up his ass, and we'll see what he's got to say about
A
that.
little updated
Little
decision
FOIA.
from the
Dana
Ness's
Attorney
decision?
General's office in order to fix that. That was the one thing I wanted to say to our people. Look at what we still have to deal with.
Yeah.
I just asked for a number of pediatric patients and got turned the F down.
That's not cool.
All right,
man.
next guy. Who's got more?
That's not cool. Jamie Lowell.
Jamie Lowell.
2019 is going to be good. There's going to be a lot of kind of questions will arise, certain gray area type things, maybe like as we were talking about today. We have to be around to help push things in the right direction this year, to get in the ear of our representatives and our local officials and do what we need to do to keep the train moving in the right direction.
The next battle is going to be the driving battle.
I think it's the social consumption, the social...
You think?
know,
You don't
yeah.
think
Oh,
it's the
that's a good one,
driving?
Deb. I've seen a lot of problems with that already.
Yeah, a lot of social consumption, yeah.
Oh. People are getting in trouble?
No,
People
I think
getting
that's...
angry because we're smoking in our own property.
No, that's not what I mean at all.
No?
I believe... No, what I mean by that is people getting together to form these clubs.
Oh, yes.
Right. Social... that's what I think is going to be the big thing.
That is something, too.
That's the big thing in this year. Yeah.
Also what Jesse's mentioning.
And how are we doing it?
Could end up,
I've seen a lot of people complaining.
people
that
smoking
now that
on their
it's
front
legal,
lawn.
People are thinking they can smoke any old where they want.
Well, they can,
Where were
can't
they
they?
smoking? In their backyard. Well,
Well,
it's
Well, like-
completely in compliance.
Can you smoke a beer on your front porch?
Can you smoke a beer in
we've
your
already
front porch?
discussed